All right, hey everybody. This week we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court and the Judicial Branch of the United States. Gonna have to go pretty quick. Got a lot to talk about, but hang on, it'll be fun. All right, so the role of the Judicial Branch. Its foremost job is to interpret and define the law. Those would be the laws passed by Congress, signed by the president. So the question comes to them. They hear individual cases and they decide how the law applies, even if the law is a good law or not. One thing I want you to remember as we go through this, don't forget about federalism. What we're talking about is the Supreme Court of the United States at the federal level, but every state also has a state Supreme Court. So the state of Indiana has an Indiana Supreme Court. More on that in a bit. So jurisdiction essentially is the authority of a court to hear, try, and then decide on a case. Nothing big and fancy there. There are 4 types of jurisdictions. We're not going to worry about them. Just know that the federal Supreme Court has any kind of jurisdiction at once. It can choose to be the first to hear a case, or it can choose to wait and be an appellate case. So that means like if someone has their case tried at a lower court and they don't like the ruling, they can eventually fight it all the way to the Supreme Court. So just like everything else we've talked about, the Supreme Court's power comes from Congress, not from Congress. Comes from the Constitution. Good Lord. Comes from Article 3 in particular. The Constitution creates one Supreme Court and such inferior courts that Congress creates. It doesn't say too much more than that. The 3rd article of the Constitution is incredibly vague, which has led to the court claiming to have some pretty crazy, awesome powers, making it one of potentially the most powerful branches within our government. So, there are 3 major steps in the federal court system. Step 1 is the district courts, and these are like your lowest level court cases. This is where normal court happens. The next level is your court of appeals. Say you get a ruling, you've been charged with something, you say you're innocent, and you want to fight it on, you go to the court of appeals. You can appeal your case over and over again, and eventually you can make it to the Supreme Court. The other way to make it to the Supreme Court is if you make it to your state Supreme Court and say the Supreme Court of the state of Indiana makes a ruling, they can go, bloop, Supreme Court, and you're there. All right, just a little bit on those, how many judges and courts there are. All right, so appointment of judges. President nominates someone to become a judge. So if there becomes an opening, the President of the United States gets to choose who fills that opening. So far, President Trump has appointed 2 people. Barack Obama also got to appoint 2. Once they're appointed, the Senate has to confirm them. So it's not just like the president says, want to be a judge? And then you're like, oh, I'm a judge. No, the Senate's like going to be like, wait a minute. Are you qualified? It takes a while. It's usually a very heated debate. Why is that? Judges serve a life term. So like you can't go back on that decision. Judges never face re-election. They don't have to be reappointed by each president or reconfirmed by the Senate. Once you're there forever until you die or you retire. And most die. They don't quit. They're there. Long haul. So why a life term? Founding fathers, they wanted the judicial branch to be independent. They were afraid that if like Supreme Court justices were always running for office, it would become political just like everything else. And they wanted that justices to be impartial. They wanted judges to be able to make decisions based on what they believe to be right, not based on what they think would be getting them reelected. There's a lot of debate around this today. People are saying it's time to have elections. Other people say it's time for having term limits. Others say it needs to be left alone and that there was a reason and a wisdom behind letting them serve for life terms. All right, so the Supreme Court is often called the court of last resort. Like if you've made it there, this is your last chance because once they rule, it's done, it's dead. It has the power of judicial review. So not only can it try like your court cases and like if it makes it like a serious decision on that, it can take something like a law passed by Congress and review it to see if it actually matches up with what's in the Constitution and say, sorry, you've overstepped your power. So like I said, judicial review is the power to declare acts of government unconstitutional. and thus like completely eliminating them. They are no longer valid. This all comes from this case called Marbury versus Madison, which is one of the first like important cases. It is like the most important case that the court ever hears, and it's one of the first cases they hear. Essentially, President John Adams, remember he's president number 2, so this is early in America. He lost the election to Thomas Jefferson, president number 3, in 1800. And to kind of like make sure that like what he did stuck around, he had Congress, who was made up by people in his party, create all these new judge positions in the United States, and he was going to appoint people that are a part of his party into those positions, like you're a judge, and you're a judge, and you're a judge. Well, he did this at the last minute, like around midnight, the day before his last day, coming in under the wire. Well, not all the paperwork got filed, all right? And so by the time he's done, not everyone's gotten their paperwork. Well, Jefferson is mad. So Jefferson orders his secretaries not to deliver those orders. And one dude who was supposed to get one is super upset about this because he wanted to be a judge. So he's like, what am I going to do? I am going to sue the president's secretary, because suing the president seems like a bad idea. And so he sues the president's secretary, James Madison. And it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's like, look, the law that allowed you to make all these positions, they're unconstitutional. You can't do that, Congress. Didn't let Thomas Jefferson win because Thomas Jefferson wanted to like make it to where he could deny the decision. Didn't let Marbury win. Marbury didn't get to become a judge. Nobody won except the Supreme Court. They won. They got a lot of power. And this is the first time they declared something unconstitutional. This power to do that did not exist in the Constitution. They gave it to themselves. They created it. And now it's like one of our foundational ideas of what preserves like our like civil liberties. Isn't that crazy? Like it's foundational to how we understand like how we protect checks and balances and separation of powers. And they just made it up. Made it up. All right, some of you may be asking, how do you even get a case to the Supreme Court? That seems like a lot of work. It is. Well, first, once you've made it through like the district courts and the appellate courts, you've got to get the judges to want to hear your case. So if you don't have something big going on, they probably won't hear it. You got to have at least 4 of the 9 judges agree to hear it. All right, we call it the rule of 4 because there's 4 judges. They put a lot of effort into that name. Or you can be issued what's called a certificate. If a lower court says they don't know how to decide on a case, and when I say lower court, I'm usually referring to like a state Supreme Court, so it's still a pretty high court, says we're not sure how to handle this. This seems like a constitutional issue. They can refer a case straight to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court goes, all right, guess we'll hear it. And they only hear a few hundred cases a year, which sounds like a lot, but there are thousands of applications to the Supreme Court every year. So it's really not that many. They hear like, 300 cases a year? Eek. Good luck getting there. All right, so in the Supreme Court, cases aren't heard like, that does not look like a normal court case. You may have seen like, I don't know, one of those old court TV shows. It's not like that. Essentially, each side presents their case. They got 30 minutes. Then the judges are going to go by themselves and they're going to discuss it and write up their own opinions. They're going to come to what's called a majority opinion, and that's going to be the final decision. It's going to take at least 5 justices. Remember, there are 9 total, so that's a majority, to make a decision. And they have to agree on what they're going to write. This is really important because this is going to become what we call precedent on how future laws are decided. Precedent just means we've ruled on this before, and this is what we did, and it should apply into the future. There's also dissenting opinions, so not everyone has to agree. There are both liberal and conservative justices. And so when they disagree, they can openly disagree. These dissenting opinions are important because they can be used later on to overturn previous rulings, and that does happen from time to time. For example, like segregation, the Supreme Court ruled that separate was equal and made segregation the law. And then several years later, they would rule that there was no such thing as separate but equal and overturn their decision. So it does happen, and these dissenting cases are important. It is possible for like someone to write like a concurring opinion, and that means they don't really agree like with the logic behind it, but they are going to vote with the majority. Not important, just know it's there. Oh yeah, I have a slide on it. Haha. All right. Last thing, we're going to look at the current Supreme Courts, like who's there. This is your Chief Justice. All right. He's probably one of the most powerful people in America. His name is John Roberts. He's appointed by George Bush in 2005. Currently, conservatives hold a majority on the court, but it is very close. They've got a 5-4 split. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for watching my video. Hopes it helps. And good luck this week. Email me if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye.